Hi guys, welcome back to Into the Light, a different life story. My show on YouTube and as a podcast with me, your host, Stefan Neff. Today is another great day. I've got another great guest with me. I've got Lieutenant Commander Theresa Carpenter with me. She's an active duty military servicewoman, and I am so excited to have her on because she shares some of the same stupid habits that drove me to be the kind of not bad doctor, let's say it like that. I'm good in my field, and I'm good and sharp and switched on when I need to be. Yet I've never really learned how to switch off for most of my career, which got me so deep into trouble in the past. So I've got a woman who is on the other side of the world, yet who shares so many similarities here with me. Theresa, thank you so much for coming on to my show.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Stephen. It's an honor to be here and to talk about a subject that is so near and dear to my heart and has been so instrumental in making me the person that I am today. So can't wait to have this conversation. And thank you so much for having me.
Oh, absolutely. It's an honor to me. Now, the question is, you are now in a position that you can talk freely about your emotions, and that is in an institution, the military, where really emotions are not highly up there. Let's just share how you feel about whatever has occurred. So that must be one of the forefront of what we want to talk about. But before we hit that, before we go there, I just want to hear your background. I mean, were you born into a military family? Was military always there?
No, I'm actually from Columbus, Ohio. It's a state in the Midwest portion of the United States. And in Columbus, Ohio, military service is not something that the kids grow up thinking they're going to do. Their impression of the military is thanking the troops. It's something that people do at bases that are not typically in Ohio. There is some Air Force bases in Ohio, but not anywhere in Columbus. And so it was not something that any of my friends were doing, anybody in my family had done. Although my father had served in the Army when he was drafted, and he went to Panama. So he had 4 years that he served in the Army, but he never talked about me joining the military. It was never on our minds. It was a decision that was made after I had moved out of my parents' house when I was the summer I turned 17, and I lived on my own my senior year in high school. And after that, I struggled after high school with getting jobs. I was, like so many young kids, I was working just a series of dead end kind of menial jobs. I bussed tables, I was a hostess, I worked at a call center, and I was not fulfilled, but I did not know myself well enough to know what I wanted to do next. And I started racking up a bunch of debt. I started partying a lot, just making some poor decisions in my relationships. And actually had a roommate who was in the Marine Corps Reserves, and a guy that I was seeing at the time also encouraged me to at least visit a recruiter and see what the options could be in order to help pay off my bills. And I thought I was just going to go into the reserves, and this would be a 1 weekend a month, 2 weekends in the summer, or 2 weeks in the summer deal. I didn't even understand until I got into the processing part of joining that this was like a full-time thing that I was embarking on. I really went into it a little blind. But I thought, well, it will teach me a skill. I'll have a steady income, and I'll get out of my hometown and see different parts of the world. It really might help give me some direction, and that's how I ended up in the service.
Were you always a sportive child? Were you, or
No, I didn't play any sports. I didn't have the confidence. I didn't understand how to do any of those things. My mom and dad are more intellectually driven, so I was a bookworm.
uh,
I was somebody who loved to have insightful and deep conversations with my friends. I was like a little quirky kid, and I did flag corps one year in high school, and I think that was really instrumental for me in learning how to overcome adversity. It was very hard for me from the choreography, and I just didn't pick up the counts as fast as I felt like some of the other kids did. But I worked my way through it and was able to perform. And I think that was my first taste of, okay, if something's hard, you can still get through it. And because up until then, I didn't pay attention in school. I cared more about hanging out with my friends, and I didn't get good grades at all. I barely graduated. And I was in theater. I did like theater a lot. I was in the backstage crew, though. I wasn't even an actor or doing anything that was a little bit more prominent. But I enjoyed that. I've always loved story. I've always loved movies and books and film. And so I was drawn to theater for the same reason. And so I had a little bit of experience with that, but no, the military was just this option that came along. And like I said, had no idea that 25 years later, I'd still be going. Didn't see it coming.
But I can see the temptation. I can see the thirst for direction and for structure and for a means to get out of the rut and the uncertainty that you found yourself in the Midwest. So I can see the temptation and obviously you're still there, 25 years, that's quarter of a century.
Right.
Congratulations on that service, for crying out loud. And you're still climbing up the career ladder as you do. And nowadays you're proud of it, but there must have been so many moments where there must have been doubt, because there was not this
Yeah.
born in conviction, this kind of, yes, I
No,
am fifth generation Marine kind of thing.
no. And I've always been a little bit different. I was always kind of an outsider growing up, and I never seemed to fit in with anyone. Like there was never like a group of kids that just thought, oh, she's so cool. No, that was never me. I was always really good at having intimate friends and friends that I would get really close to. So I would always have like one best friend, a companion. And it would kind of bounce around from girl to girl. But I just felt like when I joined the Navy, there started to be ways that I could move up. And I saw that there were clear expectations. Like if you do this and you show your value here, you will be rewarded and you will get advanced. And I saw it as a fair playing field, quite honestly. And I thought, wow, this is very straightforward. I do this, I advance. Yes, I got to deal with these idiots sometimes and people that I don't get along with, but I had come from a little bit of a dysfunction growing up, so I understood how to operate in chaos. And so there were times that were incredibly difficult, and I just kind of fared my way through it because I was like, well, I can take a ratings exam and I can advance to the next rank. I can get these qualifications. Why can't I? I just had that attitude, like almost like, you're not going to tell me I can't do something, And so that was sort of and that's sort of your insecurity coming up too. Like you have to prove yourself, but it was also something that propelled me forward.
Oh, of course. On the contrary, that's a very powerful thing, because when you come from a dysfunctional background and you're rolling with the punches, hopefully not literally, then I mean, I was insecure as hell. And then suddenly I was the bullied little child. And then I was sort of the nerdy, weird child when I was sort of in the middle of school. And then suddenly one day I figured out I'm thirsty for knowledge. And it came by accident, because I was mediocre at best at school. And then my dad said, look, come on, you can do better. I tell you what, I give you 5 Deutschmark if you are best in your class for a test. And I give you 2 Deutschmarks if you're second best, and nothing thereafter. Well, for a short period of time, turns out that I was greedy, because I said, look, you owe me $100. And he said, damn, I didn't think you would do that. And he didn't have the money. So that's good. I never got that $100. But what I did get was that thirst for knowledge. And suddenly I was no longer the nerdy kid. I was the nerdy kid who was beating the teacher in their games. I knew more than the teacher. And instead of making me a target, it actually made me the hero in the class. So suddenly I had the first validation as from that, coming from a very insecure kind of background to, wow, that's me. And I guess that was what you have achieved there. You were saying, wow, I can do that. And that is like intoxicating. That is like
it's a drug all in and of itself. Success is also an addiction.
Isn't it?
Because it really is. Because then once you get that feeling and that high, when you pass, advance to the next rank, you're like, oh, I want more. And I've had to wrestle with that too. As I've gotten older, of what is it now that I define as being successful versus what it used to mean to me. And I'm sure we all I think a lot of people, when they approach middle age, they get to that point where it's like the things that I valued as being successful are maybe not the same things that I value today. But yes, you're right. It was kind of that thing that it was definitely one of my addictions was achieving rank and qualifications. I could be the most qualified person in my work center, and I could go and operate any piece of machinery and system. And I was the most valuable go-to person for everything that anybody needed fixed on the aircraft. And so I really relished in being that person. And in showing my value that way. And so it can also become very intoxicating. I agree.
And you're setting yourself standards that are very hard to achieve, because to be the best of the best, you have to be the best of the best constantly, not just when you're having a good day, but also when you're having a bad day. How did you deal with bad days?
And a lot of times I would just obsess. I would just constantly overthink and just stew on most of my bad days always revolved around somebody I was having an issue with. Whether that be a friend, some sort of drama that was going on with a friend, or a lot of times it was drama with coworkers or drama with a boss. And I would just obsess, and I would almost I would look at it as like this manipulation game where who was going to win, and there'd be this like power struggle in my mind of how I was going to get one over this person. And those were all very unhealthy, addictive behaviors and habits. And it was incredibly difficult at certain times to deal with because I was still being bullied sometimes too. And I didn't yet understand how to stand up to people. And so I would use passive aggressive behaviors as a way to respond to people who were bullying me. Instead of confronting them, instead of understanding that, hey, guess what? Not everyone's going to like you, Theresa. It's okay. It's okay to have people that just don't, that your message doesn't resonate with. And I just couldn't accept that. Like I couldn't accept not being liked. And now it's so much easier. I still don't like it. And I still find myself a little bit struggling with it. But as long as that person doesn't have power over me, I don't have power over them. But it is difficult. It is still something to this day that I have to really keep myself in check upon is whether or not I'm obsessing too much over being liked. And it really does go back to those days of being bullied and those days of not being cool, not fitting in and wanting to fit in. But then, like you say, it's also a superpower because it's the way that I'm able to kind of break the mold and do things other people don't do and sort of be my own trailblazer and my own little pathfinder, finding my way, having a podcast. No public affairs officers have their own podcast and talk about the kinds of stuff I talk about. And so it's a blessing and a curse at the same time.
Oh, please. But also give yourself some credit there. You're fighting an powerful foe there because you're fighting 50,000 years of evolution. Because remember, when men were real men and women real women with bear skins over their shoulders, they lived in small tribes. 20 people, maybe maximum 200, but this was a very close-knit community. Now, if you were pulling your weight there and everything is all right, cool. If you're not pulling your weight or you piss people off, then you get thrown out of the tribe, which was a certain death sentence. So over those 50,000 years, we have had deeply ingrained into the very, very deep recesses of our brain that you must comply, that you must fit in, that it is really good to be loved and to be part of a group of people. So that is hardwired in us, that desire. And therefore it can be too powerful a thing, because that makes us the people pleasers. That makes us the you're constantly there for everyone. You don't put yourself first. No. Everyone else comes first. And then you're so knackered that you're just constantly go, crash. Go, crash. That was me for a very long time. And maybe still today a little bit. Bloody.
It's a hard habit to break. And like I say to people all the time, I think we're all works in progress, and we're all hopefully, evolving and becoming better. But
Yeah.
I think that some of those ways in which I was that have been ingrained into me, I still have to wrestle with. I just handle them a lot better these days, and they don't bother me nearly as much as they used to, because I'm so much more in love with who I am. And so because of that, it's like, it's more like an annoying fly now when stuff like that happens than something that really like terribly makes my day go wrong. So it's just, it's how I see it these days, that's changed.
Having said that, you don't come to the point where you and I are right now without having gone through some dark periods. So here you were, the young woman who is finding her feet, who is proving herself, who is climbing through the ranks. When did you start trying to escape the reality? When did you start having problems dealing with the life that you had chosen?
So I think that the hardest part for me was the fact that couldn't find a healthy partner. So, I had this very unhealthy attraction to people who could not commit to me. And it didn't really change until I was in my late 30s. And so I ended up even marrying somebody that wasn't that type, but that I wasn't compatible with, because he just didn't have the same goals that I did. We just weren't going down the same road, but he was nice to me. And I was so used to people not being nice to me. And I almost like got a high off of it. Like if somebody was, I was the, the classic dysfunctional woman that likes the bad guys, or likes the guy that can't commit and thinks that she's going to be the one who changes him. And I thought, like, I knew there was something wrong with me. I knew. I was like, why am I'm physically attracted to these people? I'm drawn to them. And it's because they have a lot of the same unhealthy and toxic behaviors that I was displaying. And I didn't understand that that's why I was being drawn to people like that. I even had friends who were like that as well. And I think that that's when it started early on. I mean, even when I was a teenager, I was always hanging out with the rebels and the partiers and the kids that, would break the rules and just be crazy when we would go out and drink together. And drinking was glamorous to me. So I think that alcohol plays such a part in choosing the men that I did, because I was always attracted to the dude, the alpha male, the life of the party, the guy that all the other dudes wanted to be like. But that guy's usually a real asshole. And I just couldn't get enough of those kind of people. Those were the ones I wanted in my life. And I didn't understand that that's not a real man. It didn't even equate to me, because in my mind I had socialized myself over years and years of conditioning that mode of person was attractive. And so that didn't really even change. Even throughout my marriage, I was with this nice guy. He, treated me well. He had some manipulative behaviors, but he wasn't a jerk like what I liked. And I think that ultimately led to my undoing because I eventually just wanted to gravitate towards those unhealthy people. And so to change that mindset, to this day, it's like, I don't know how I did it. In my late 30s, I finally met somebody that wasn't that way and but was strong and still his own person and doesn't, follow the quote unquote society rules. He's just a great person who is his own person. But that's really what it was, is that I just, this whole time I was in the service, I was alone for the most part. I felt very alone and on my own, and it would always be my undoing, especially when I was around groups. I would just drink to feel okay and to feel like I could be myself, because the anxiety would just start to boil up and I'd start to feel so nervous around all these people and, oh, they don't like me. And so I would just drink. I would just drink myself into a stupor, and then I would be fun and I'd be having a good time and everyone would love me and I was the life of the party. And so that was what I equated having friends and intimacy with, was when I was drunk. And that's how it started. And it didn't stop until I stopped looking at alcohol as a cool, glamorous thing. And instead I saw it as a crutch to relieve anxiety. And that's what, when I saw it as a crutch to relieve my social awkwardness and my anxiety, everything changed, because I was no longer a victim to this drug anymore. It was instead just something I enjoyed having, but I didn't need to have it in order to fit in, because I had to know that it doesn't matter if I don't fit in this group. I still need to be myself. And so that's what changed for me.
It's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. I must say, the same change happened for me, but it took me much, much longer than it appears to have happened to you. The insight there seems to be quite profound, clear, and you switched. For me, it took probably years to come off that rat race, hamster wheel of trying to be the best, 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 crashing, considering myself constantly an imposter and a failure, and drowning my sorrows as part of that,
Right.
towards that person who is now saying, yeah, okay, that's me, warts and all, and I love myself, and I really mean it.
Absolutely.
But that took years. That took years. So, and I mean it, probably 5 years, 6 years, that I really can now say, yeah, okay, this is me. Um, was it really such a quick process for you,
Oh,
or
no,
no? No.
no, it wasn't, because I was going through a lot of self-help for years. And I would go to church, and that would help a little bit because I'd be around better people through
Yeah.
church. Um, but I never broke that unhealthy attraction towards it's called like the avoidant. If you like, I've done a lot of studying on attachment disorder, and I really believe that attachment theory is such a powerful way to understand what happens to people when they're living in their dysfunction.
Mm.
And so there's the avoidant attachment disorder, and then there's me, which is, I forget what the other end of the screen, but the people that are attracted to the avoidance, the needy kind of people.
Mm.
That was me. And I once I understood that, that was what really changed the game for me, because at first I thought, man, it's because I've got attention deficit disorder or I've got bipolar. And I thought I had all these other things, when really I had an attachment injury. I'm adopted. And growing up, my mom and dad, they did their best, but I had a lot of, conflict with my mom and I. We had a lot of, just sometimes did not have the best relationship. And we have a much better one today, which I'm very grateful for. But I think a lot of that period in my life just really made me feel traumatized and made me feel alone, and started my victim mentality, where I thought, I'm just not good. There's something wrong with me. And so you think there's something wrong with you. And so you build a wall around yourself, and you're like, screw these people. Fuck that. I'm just going to get what I need to get out of life. And so you live your life that way. Like, I'm just going to see how I can manipulate and play power games and do all this other stupid stuff, because I don't think anyone's going to love me if they know who I really am on the inside. And that was, and so it was definitely a lot of fits and starts, Stephen. It wasn't one day I woke up and said, oh, I'm different. It was really examining what was going on with this attachment injury, and then how do I put myself in social situations where I'm not around other people who have attachment injuries. Because if I'm just only around other people with attachment injuries, I'm never going to grow, because I'm going to be around a bunch of other people that are victim blaming and playing victim and thinking, oh, the world is bad. I did have this mean world syndrome going on where everybody was lucky in life and they are talented and gifted and I'm not good at anything, poor me. And so I had to be around people that don't live like that and don't act that way. And I had to say, what is it that they have that I don't? Some of these people had traumatic childhoods. I would go to anonymous groups meetings and I'd be around these leaders and I'd be like, these guys running the meetings, and they were raped as children. They were molested. They had all this horrible things happen, and they're not the way I am. And they're married and they've got healthy relationships now. How did they do it? And that's when it really started to kick in for me.
And that's beautiful. That's beautiful. And it is a series of many little events, of many little
Yes.
things that have occurred that, one evening you get one little moment, and then a week later you get and it's amazing. It is basically like you're having a granite block and you try to do a statue. It's not just one hammer bang, there's the statue. No, it takes you hours and days and weeks, and it's exactly touche.
Really?
And it's powerful. I mean, I love to hear you being so open about that, because that is so important. What is intriguing for me, though, is that you are here on this journey of self-discovery, and a beautiful journey it is. You're saying that you've tried to escape reality with your alcohol, and yet at the same token, you were actually in the Navy. You were actually going through the ranks. There is this kind of a strange thing. I mean, I assume you were land-based. You were not deployed on ships.
Sometimes I was deployed.
Yeah.
It would depend. And when I would abuse the alcohol, it would be when I would pull into a port, I would just get stupid drunk.
Right.
And I have to have a friend, take care of me that shouldn't have had to do that. And then it would happen, like I said, and this is where like the fits and starts would happen, because I would be okay for a while. And then I would just get into a situation where I felt awkward and uncomfortable and not feeling loved and feeling accepted. And so then I would just drink again to get that feeling of love again, because I wanted to be accepted and I wanted to be liked. And so I felt like if I was drunk, people would like me. So it went on for years, off and on. There would be periods, like even when I was in my marriage, and I was happy with my ex-husband, we would go months sometimes and be very happy, and it wouldn't really fester to the point where I had to address it, because I was constantly being distracted by just the day-to-day life. But it never really left my mind that this was this glamorous thing that I could do to escape reality and be accepted. And so because I associated drinking with being loved and with being accepted, I continued to do it off and on. And so I could still achieve things and I could still move through the ranks, but then there was in 2014, and I'll speak about this very openly, I got a DUI. I rammed a car ahead in front of me, and no damage to either car, but the guy flipped out about whatever. He was an Uber driver, and they insisted they call the police, and I had to spend a night in jail, and I almost lost my career as a lieutenant. So when that happened, you'd think like, oh no, she'll never drink again. No, I just stopped drinking and driving. And I started going to anonymous meetings, and that helped tremendously. Like I said, that gave me a lot of perspective about like, wait a minute, Theresa, you were not sexually molested. You were not raped. These people have had traumas that are just way worse. They've been homeless. They've been heroin addicts, you name it. They've just had all this horrible things happen, and they're still moving on. And that gave me a lot of pause. But I still had very unhealthy relationship dating behaviors. And so that didn't really end until I met my husband. I met my husband in my late 30s and I'm 44 now. So
Mm,
I've really only been at this very, very wonderful place in my life and so happy um,
mm,
since I've met him, but I don't abuse alcohol and I see success a lot differently. So I think those things have made it a lot better for me. But
mm,
I do owe a lot of my gratitude towards, the way I am by seeing somebody like my husband who just
mm,
really is such a wonderful, shining
mm,
example of kindness and strength, all wrapped into one,
mm, mm,
and he inspires me a lot.
mm. Which is so beautiful that you found that person, and that is your saving grace. What strikes me a little bit is about what you don't talk about. Um, is what you don't talk about is the the role of alcohol in the Navy and the role of any support system within the Navy that might have helped you to deal with your emotions or might have helped you to deal with your addiction. Was there at that time an awareness within the Navy? Were there programs there that you could have sought help through, like an employee assistance program (EAP)? Is there something like that in
Yes.
the Navy?
There are, and I have sought counseling off and on. The Navy's actually very good about those things. The problem was is that I had a psychotic disorder when I
Mm,
was 19 and I was hospital 20 and I was hospitalized. I was sent home from duty station in Iceland and they were going to process me out of the Navy. And
mm.
I fought a med board to stay in the military.
Ah,
And so because of that year of fighting
mm,
psychologists who wanted to kick me out, I was very untrusting of
sure,
mental health.
sure.
And so I did use this thing called Military One Source. That was the only thing I would use because you can go 12 sessions and it doesn't get in your medical record. But
Mm,
I was terrified of going back to mental health because every time I wanted to
mm,
move on in my career,
mm,
I had to go back and revisit this incident. And I had to talk about how I had a brief psychotic episode, not otherwise specified. And I had to revisit what led to that incident
mm,
and ways in which I was doing amazing now in order to keep going in the military. But it really caught up with me with
mm,
the drinking. And I had an incident when I was in Malabar, which is another ship that I was on. I was on an exercise Malabar in India, where I woke up after a blackout, still in my whites, puke, blah, 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 terrified of what I said or did that evening. Turns out I acted fine and the guys got me home, but it scared the shit out of
mm,
me. And at that point, I was a lieutenant commander, same
mm,
rank I am now. It was in 2018. And that's when I sought help. And I broke down crying
mm,
to a chief on the ship. We were deployed. And I just said, I can't control this anymore. I can't
mm.
get wasted a reception as a public affairs officer and not know what I said or did. And it scared the shit out of me, Stephen, because I was terrified that someone saw me and I was having a lot of drama in my work center and I thought
Uh,
something this could come back to haunt me somehow. And so I made the choice to seek help through the drug and alcohol program. It's called DAPA, or it's the I forget what they call it through the Navy, but yes, to answer your question, they do an amazing job. And I was shocked that there would have been this kind of treatment in the beginning, because addiction counselors are a lot different than any other counselor I think you'll go to, because they hold addicts accountable, and that's what I really needed. And I'll never forget when the counselor after that deployment, because they couldn't send me while I was on deployment, but I just said, I won't drink this rest of the deployment, but I want to go to treatment. They sent me to a 2 week, it was not residential, but you just went all day.
yeah.
And I really developed a really great rapport with one of the counselors, and he got me in a room with their senior counselor, and I was just going on and on about all these problems I was having with one of my coworkers and how she was so wrong and who does she think she is and blah blah blah, and I was just consumed with that situation, like obsessed about it. And the counselor was like, do you think maybe she's triggering something with you, a dynamic that you've had in your past? And that was a game changer for me because I didn't even understand what triggers were or any of that. And they were like, well, sounds like you're kind of obsessing about this situation and you're being a little bit of a victim. You're playing the victim card, Theresa. And it was all I needed to hear. And they were absolutely right. I mean, I just kind of sat there dumbfounded and I didn't know what to say. And it was the best thing they could have said to me. It really was. And honestly, I wish I thought treatment for alcohol abuse so much sooner in my career.
That's it. That was in week 2 in my rehab. I was full of resentment and anger, and my counselor asked me to write a letter to a certain organization that I held responsible for much of my bullying and suffering. And so I went to town that night, wrote letters and reams of paper, wrote it. And then they came there, yeah. Let's talk what they did to me. Let's talk what they did. That's right. I read a book out of that. And then she sort of looked at it, flipped through it, and then folded it aside and put it to the side and sort of said, okay, let's talk about you now. And I said, but, no, let's. And I was angry about this poor counselor. I was absolutely angry. Oh, how dare she treat me like that? So I then reflected on her and transferred on her that my anger. And it took me a few days to actually get my shit together and actually realize, there's maybe more to that, as you said. Right. But it is just, oh my God. But this anger, this can be so self-destructive. So
it really can. It eats you up. Oh my God, it eats you alive. And I do think there's probably some sort of, like you say, evolution. There's some sort of a self-protection mechanism in place that we're fighting when we're having a conflict where we just want to push the blame on someone else. And you know, it can be difficult because you have to think about what's my side of the street versus what's their side of the street.
Yeah.
But that's life. You're gonna have to work with people that don't always love you, and you have to learn. That's resilience. You have to learn how to work with those people. It's part of life, and all you can do is be respectful. You be kind. You be professional. If there's someone you're working with that you don't see eye to eye with, try to politely limit your interactions with that person in a way that is still respectful and is still kind and is still giving them the grace that you want extended upon yourself. And that's to me the best that I think we can do in those situations. But yeah, I struggled a lot in those areas, and it took, like you say, it's a growing and healing. I think that's the part that a lot of people have struggles with too, is that when they get into counseling or they get into therapy, they just want to be healed immediately. And sometimes they don't understand that this might take years of fits and starts. And you got to be patient with yourself and understand that you're going to fall and you're going to probably slip up a few times before you get better.
So true. 80% relapse rate in the first year, that is a given. You can expect that you stumble and fall. So I love the way you put that there. And it's so true. And over my shoulder there, this one there, that's the old version of Steps to Sobriety. It's taken off the market now because the new version is coming out in a month or two. But there's a whole chapter in there dealing with toxic people. But also there's a chapter in there about taking criticism and constructive criticism.
Right.
And it is such a hard thing when you're living in this victim mentality where you blame everything and everyone around you without actually taking ownership. And that is the hard thing. I was that typical victim there. I made myself that victim. I think one of the best books to read on a different approach would be Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink, US Navy SEAL. And I love his attitude that everything is his problem, but not in the sense of, I need to beat myself up, but rather taking the approach that if someone in a rank below you stuffs up, then you either haven't given the person the tools or the knowledge or the skills to do their job. And if someone above you in the rank fucks up, then you might have not provided that person with the data that he needed to make a more informed decision, etc. So it was that kind of active taking ownership and trying to improve your communication and developing that awareness of what is going on in the bigger scheme of things, rather than, oh, he looked at me bad. You know, and it gets this emotional, personal kind of thing
Oh yeah.
without you actually listening to what was said. Because, you know, sometimes people are right.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes.
What's hard is sometimes your worst critics that may not really have your best interest at heart can say the most truest things about your personality. And so it's like you have to know, and that's a really hard skill, and I work on it every day. Whereas somebody I may not see eye to eye on, and who I may not care for, actually has very valid criticism and feedback about the way I am and the way I act. And it's like, well, I have to compartmentalize that and go, okay, I don't like this about this person, but I agree with what they're giving me about this situation, because
Absolutely.
I do that. I am selfish in this way, or I, you know, whatever the case is. And that takes, like you say, radical ownership. But I find it empowering. I think I wish more people would own their shit, because when you own things, you're in control, I think, because you're going, okay, I do that. And yes, that is something I do need to work on. And I think that puts the ownership of the issue onto you. And then you have the ability to do something about it, instead of just saying, woe is me, the world sucks, life is horrible. Well, life's not fair for everyone. And I think that's what helps me too, is like, there is nobody that gets through life unscathed. Everyone has trauma. Everyone has shit they're dealing with, right? Like, I have this arm thing that's not even that bad right now, but it's bad in my mind. But it's nothing compared to, I'm sure, other people are dealing with. And so that puts it in perspective for me.
Yes and no, yes and no. This is not a pissing contest, for crying out loud. It is, but his friend was ripped to shreds in front of him. Now he has got a right to have PTSD. If you were in a road traffic accident and you are quite traumatized by that, well, you know, you might have just a shoulder injury, but for you, that is trauma. So it's no contest. It is whatever it is for you. You might have to deal with what life has served you here and there. In your case, a shoulder injury. There you go. It is scary. And perfectionists like us, we automatically think, oh my God, we catastrophize. My life is end now. My God, I'm turning old. I will not be able to do the next physical fitness test. Therefore, will I make it, Commander? Or will I be able to ascend through the ranks? Or is that shoulder injury now the end of it? You know, it's all those fears and those.
All those thoughts come. Like, oh gosh, am I going to get the cool jobs at work now? Am I going to just sit around in the office and do admin work? Oh no.
Exactly.
Why can't I go to Korea in August or wherever I might go? You know, it's just these kinds of things that go through my mind when I'm like, well, really, I should just treat my darn shoulder and stop worrying about what the heck happens.
Oh, beautiful.
But we obsess, and I think that's part of being an addict is obsessing. Is that we take something and we just ruminate about it in our mind over and over and over again. And then, but the thing that I try not to do, and I work on is what I try not to do is unload that on the other people, because because it's in my mind, number one, I have control of my mind. I can stop thinking about this thing and obsessing over it. And the other thing I can do is it is not other people's burden to take on. And you don't want to be that kind of person that's just constantly unloading on other people.
Oh, sure.
You know,
how has your own leadership changed with your personal growth? Has that been reflected on the way you communicate with the people around you in the Navy? And how did they take that?
Well, I'll go back to that situation that occurred on that ship where I sought the treatment for alcohol abuse. I was having, like I was saying, a lot of issues not only with that person that I mentioned, but a couple other people as well. And once it was pointed out to me how bad things had gotten, and that I I was the problem in some of the cases, I started changing the way I led tremendously. I would not let things get emotional. I stopped being passive aggressive. I worked very hard to really take ownership of the things that I was doing and the ways in which I was contributing to making that situation toxic. And I saw an incredible difference, to be honest with you. So much so that people from my department said, I don't know what happened. I don't know what's going on, but we're so much happier now. And I think it's because that they saw that I wasn't every day constantly fighting with one particular person. And I think that, you know, as the senior person, it was my responsibility to take the high road and to figure out a way to best serve not only this person, but everybody in my department who saw what was going on. And unfortunately, like I said, I was desensitized to a toxic work environment. So it was just nothing new to me to be able to function this way. But it was when other people around me saw how bad it was getting and brought it to my attention. Well, that was when I took ownership of it and said, okay, I need to get treated for my alcohol issue, and I need to change the way that I lead. And one of the other things that it taught me was to get in front of situations. So if I'm having a conflict with someone, not only do I have to address it with that person and try to come to a common understanding with that person that things are not so great, but we'll do the best we can. If I sense that I might be getting undermined or that they're questioning what I'm doing and it's getting to other people, I've got to make sure that the people above me are not blindsided by what's going on. And so that was also another mistake that I made in this situation is I blindsided my upper leadership because I didn't trust them to take care of it. I was always like, well, I can take care of this. I got it. And so that I also learned from this situation, and I lead a lot differently now. So even at the command I went to after this one, I had a situation where I felt like me and a certain person, it could have gotten contentious, and it never did because I communicated with him every step of the way what I was doing to try to fix this issue. And I was communicating with all my leadership about what I was doing to fix this issue because I had learned from that prior situation that it doesn't matter if you don't trust the people or not. You just have to communicate what it is you're doing to help solve the problem. And if they don't like the way you're doing it, they'll tell you. They'll say, no, Theresa, have you thought about it like this? Have you thought about it like that? And I never even came close to those kinds of issues ever again, because I had learned how to get in front of things and also not to let myself get into a place where I'm being passive aggressive. And I know that I have a tendency to do that because I don't like confrontation. And so passive aggressiveness is a way for people like me who don't like confrontation. We're trying to get our little in there, but it's very toxic and people see right through it. So you just can't do it.
Brilliant. Has that changed so that people are looking forward to be part of your team? Is that something that by leading by example, that other people have taken on maybe a more proactive role as well?
Oh yeah, I definitely think so. I think that the people that I've had work, I haven't had led a large team like that since, but I have had people come and work for me and be on my team. And I think that the way I try to lead now is 100% by example. You know, I don't, my people never stay in the office longer than I'm there. So if it's an early day for me, it's an even earlier day for them. And to be quite frank with you, I just haven't had any issue with anyone who's worked for me that has been like that since. I have had issues where either a coworker or somebody on the same level, I could sense that things could have gotten to a place where they could have been contentious. And so I knew how to, like I was saying, I knew how to get in front of that. But as far as the people that I have around me now, I mean, I couldn't be more thankful. I have an amazing work environment with the people I work with today. And I don't have any of those issues. Now, granted, I don't have as stressful of a job. And so that plays a role as well. So my next assignment after this one, depending on what I choose, could be another job, like an ass kicker job, like the one I had, where it will put me in those situations where I will probably get challenged like that again, depending on the people. You know, it all depends on the team that you get. We don't choose our teams in the military. They, you know, those are chosen for us. And so it's just going to depend on where I go next and what happens next. But I can tell you, my relationships are so much better, and you know, we're not going to stop in life having conflicts with people. That's always going to be there. I think I handle it a lot better though now because of that whole situation. I needed to learn that lesson, and I'm glad I did.
Don't forget, 10% of people have got a personality disorder. 1% of the people that you meet are bona fide psychopaths, sociopaths. These people will not go away just because you want to lead different or make yourself a different person. These will still be there. They will thrive on chaos. They will instigate chaos because that's how they tick. That's where they feel best. They are pieces of shit, basically. But yeah, they will be there. But I love the way how you said earlier, how you're dealing with that by being actually transparent and by not becoming the magnet of their hate or their chaos, but rather by deflecting, by doing whatever you can, but accepting that you can't be the superwoman that fixes everything, but rather communicating up the rank and say, okay, guys, this is what we're doing here. This is what's happening. And I think that is the key thing. Therefore, you're deflecting. Therefore, you are actually taking the heat away from directly onto you. And that's so powerful what you're doing there. So the communication is the key to this conflict resolution, to the de-escalation that you're doing there. And that is God.
I don't give it power, you know? And I think that's the best thing that you can do is when you're in that situation, you may know or you may sense that somebody isn't healthy, like you say, has a little bit of that dysfunction going on. And what I try to do now is I celebrate the parts of their personalities that are not like that. I can sense that there's those sides to those kinds of people, and I'm very sensitive to it, I think, because I've been around it a lot. But when I sense it, I just know, okay, maybe that's somebody that I'm not going to share, you know, all my secrets with, or I'm not going to invest a lot of my emotional time with. It'll be more somebody that I have a very polite and respectful relationship with, but who I may not share a lot of myself with because it won't be welcomed. They don't, for some reason, they don't care for me, and that's okay. And so that's the way that I've found to deal with that, is that, you know, you can't, like you say, there are some people in this world who haven't dealt or addressed their traumas, and it comes through in the way they treat others and the things that they say to people sometimes. And when I see that, that's a red flag to me to say, okay, that's probably somebody I'm going to limit my interactions with and my time with. I'll still have to work with that person, or I'll still have to coordinate things with that person, but I'm probably not going to joke around with them or share all my stories with them. You know, that they're just going to be somebody that I have a little bit of a boundary with. And I think that's what's healthy of life, is that you identify those people that are not safe, or in that you may not want to share all of your story with, and that's okay.
Did you ever meet someone who you recognized your younger self in? The reason I'm asking that is the last week or two, I certainly have met two patients where I looked at them and I thought, oh, I know you so well. I could just read them like a book, and it was just the same bullshit that I was spouting the same behavior, the same trying to hide yet trying to ask for help in a weird way. Did that happen to you?
Yes, I certainly had people on my team and friends that I've come across who definitely do some of the same things that I used to do. And it's very it is very, and they'll hide it by, oh, I don't want a relationship, or they'll say things like that. And it's like stuff that I used to say, when I was hurting. And I have a lot of compassion for them. Oh, I have a good example. I was on a clubhouse room and I was talking about it was about narcissists and about sort
Mm,
of how do you avoid the online vitriol. And I say, you don't respond. I say, when someone says something crazy,
mm.
you just don't respond to it. And there were people in the group that just got really defensive about that. And I get it, because I used to get riled up by those things too. And so that, I have a lot of compassion when I see somebody being my younger self and doing some of the things that I used to do. It usually causes me to feel very empathetic towards them,
Mm.
and I try not to minimize it or judge it, because I know that in their mind, they do feel they have to get, and a lot of people think like, oh, I can't just turn it off like a switch like you can, Theresa. And they don't understand my story, or
Mm.
understand that this isn't something I just happened to come across overnight and decide not to give a fuck.
Mm.
No, this was something that took me years and years of
Mm.
stop and start, stop and start, stop and start, until I got to a place where I decided that I couldn't live like that anymore. And again, I'm also around somebody every day now in my life who shows me what right looks like. And so I get a lot of inspiration just from watching him.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Theresa, wow, you have gone through such a journey, and you keep going on this journey, and your path is just so, it's like mine, convoluted. And
Yeah.
you've just come to that corner and think, wow, see, I've come so far. And then you come around and you think, wow, there's more to go. There's more to learn, and there's more, yay. So it is exciting. I wouldn't have it any other way. Uh,
You know what
has it been traumatic? Oh, hell yes, hell yes.
I
It's wonderful. It is. Do you get any not feedback? What do I want to say? Any blowback from you being so outspoken now? Certainly from the Navy.
Mhm.
What do they think about it?
It depends. I mean, I'm very good about making sure that ethically and by the regs and all those things, I'm doing this the correct way. But I've been active on social media ever since Facebook was
Mm,
created. And I've been active on social media in terms of, I used to do protests in front of pet stores to stop puppy mills. I have had a blog since 2014, so nothing I do on social media is new.
right.
So there have just been people that I can tell, especially within my own professional community, just by the way they treat me. Like
Mm,
when I see them at conferences and they'll barely talk to me or whatever, or I'll kind of, I'll just be friendly and I can tell that their friendliness is not reciprocated. That I know, like, I'm probably not one of the golden kids or the cool kids in the room or whatever, to some people.
mm,
But then, you know what, Stephen, on the flip side, I've got people who in my own community in public affairs who say, keep doing what you're doing,
mm,
Theresa. I love what you're doing. You're
mm,
inspiring me. You're
mm.
inspiring other sailors that they too can share their story and they
I
too
love
can
it.
be active on social media. Social media is not the enemy. And it's really, to me, and I say this all the time, it's no different than me having a conversation with somebody face to face.
Mm,
I would have the same thing to say to
mm,
somebody if they sat
mm,
down and had coffee with me than I would through a computer screen. It's no different.
mm,
And could people take what I say out of context? Could they twist my words around? Yeah, but they're going to do that
mm.
in everyday conversation as well. So I see this as an amazing way. Like, I would have never met you. You're all the way halfway across the world. But
Mm,
through the power of technology, you and
mm,
I are able to connect. And
mm,
I think that is a beautiful, amazing thing.
mm,
And it has inspired me to start my podcast. It's
mm,
inspired me to be more active on other platforms like
mm,
LinkedIn and Instagram. So I I don't like the blowback that I get occasionally. I do sometimes let it get to me, especially if it comes from somebody who I respect, because sometimes
mm,
it comes from people I like or that I respect or who have careers that I admire.
mm,
Um, and I can just tell, like I said, it's not something that they personally say to me, but I can tell by some of the things that they say publicly about this issue or that the way that they treat me. I
mm,
can tell that maybe it's not welcomed. But I think I'm on the right path,
mm.
and
Yeah.
I believe in what I'm doing.
How many veterans are killing themselves in the United States every day? Okay, this is the only answer, the only question that you need to ask in order to quieten these people. You cannot just turn young men and women into these machines that at times have to take lives, that at times have to go through scenarios that no one in their sane mind can come through and be normal, whatever normal is, again. So, no, we need to be quite clear about that. We need to accept that we as human beings are vulnerable. And it doesn't matter if you're a type A personality who's running onto the battlefield, or if you are in a different framework in your head. It doesn't matter. There will be trauma. There will be hard, brutal times that will not be easy for you. That is normal. That is normal in each and every life. The
Yeah,
only way that we can protect ourselves is to create resilience, to create that feeling of understanding towards ourselves, the feeling of love towards ourselves. And in the
absolutely.
moment that you start modeling that, that you're going out there and say, yes, here am I, warts and all. No, I'm not proud of what I've done then, but I'm very proud of what I'm doing now. And that makes me a stronger person. So if again shit happens, I will be able to deal with that in a different way. That is leadership. That is
Yeah,
you going out there and
absolutely.
being a role model for the young, confused women and men who
Right.
are coming through the services now.
I want all people in the military to know that they can share their story and that
Absolutely.
they can be free to be who they are online, in person, and express themselves.
Mm,
As long as they're not violating any, military policies, they're not
absolutely.
speaking out against a DoD policy in uniform in an official capacity.
Mm,
They are free to have a voice and to express themselves. And by
mm,
expressing ourselves, we tell others that we're not alone, that there's somebody else out there that's been called bipolar or that's
mm,
been in a psychiatric hospital or who struggle with alcohol abuse. They're not the only ones that have gone through these problems. I just had a guy on my podcast who saw just unspeakable, horrific acts of battle. And he's a strong Latino male, very macho, and he had to overcome so much
mm,
to seek help, not only to seek help, but then
mm,
to come on a podcast. He had
mm,
never even spoken to media before I met
mm,
him in El Salvador. So the 2 weeks that I was, or about a month that I was there, he spoke to two different media outlets and he got on my podcast. That takes some freaking balls. I'm
mm,
nerd. Sorry, it's
mm,
probably offensive, but it took
mm,
some nerve for him to do
mm.
that. And I admire him so much for it because we need more people sharing their struggles, sharing their vulnerability, and
Mm.
saying, I struggled, so that people know like it's okay. It's
Mm.
okay to go get treatment. It's okay to screw up. It's
Absolutely.
okay to fall, because it's when we fall we learn and we grow.
And we grow stronger.
And so
And yeah, you become
yeah,
better leaders because
you
you're
do.
going through it. And is if you go back to the Falklands War, where the UK fought Argentine, the English went through some very brutal fighting. And some of the soldiers were repatriated via airplane. They were basically bang, 24, 48 hours later, they were back in the UK. Others were sailing home and were basically able for those several weeks on the ship to decompress, to talk about their things, their experiences, etc. The incidence of PTSD was remarkable in the difference. The guys who flew home, the incidence of PTSD and then harmful behavior was so much higher compared with the other guys that were able to learn to talk about it in a safe environment amongst their peers. That was such a powerful lesson to be learned. Yet it seems that in many militaries, we are again forgetting these kind of things. You need to be able to talk. You need to be able to decompress and to be honest about the emotions that are being stirred up by the experiences that people have. It's all quite nice.
We need more leaders in the form talking about it. Like we get a lot of, encouragement for junior enlisted to go and seek treatment, but there are not very many people in my rank who talk about getting help themselves. And I would like to see more of that. I would like to see more of our most senior leaders, our flag officers, talking about a time that they struggled and they sought help. And I don't necessarily always mean that they sought psychiatric help either, just that they went to a support group or they, and then what that was like. I mean, I can remember being in my bathroom floor, just curled up fetal position, crying for days over a breakup and thinking I just had nobody. And it was only when I would go to these anonymous groups and I would sit there and I'd listen to these shares from people that I was like, oh, wow, I'm really not alone in this loneliness thing. There's a lot of other people who feel alone, not just me. And it was wonderful because I was able to make friends through it. I have one friend to this day who has become a cherished friend, and I met her in AA. And so I think that the more leaders who talk about their struggles, the more people will go, oh, okay, this is okay to fall, and this is okay to have these struggles, and I know that I can find people to talk to too, people that are safe and people that I can trust.
Which is beautiful. And you're encouraging people by doing that, and you have got your own podcast now. Tell us a bit about that, because that is obviously how people can share their story and maybe take that first step of speaking out and speaking up. How can they get hold of you? What is your podcast?
Okay, so I started a podcast called Stories of Service, and the tagline is Ordinary People Who Do Extraordinary Work. And so I want to showcase the person who coaches their Little League team or volunteers at their church or is involved with their local animal shelter. I'm really interested in how people give back to their communities or to their work environment if they're involved with professional organizations. Because I think that the best way to get over trauma is to be surrounded by people who are not battling themselves. I really do. I mean, all those years that I was in my addiction, or I was, battling myself or feeling sorry for myself or obsessing over things, I tended to surround myself with women who had the same traumas going on, or I would go for men that were doing the same destructive behaviors on their end. And it wasn't until I started volunteering with the animal advocacy people and getting involved in the animal policy and protection that I really learned about just these wonderful, empathetic people who just felt so passionate about the cause. And it really opened my eyes to, like, this is not all that there is to life, is this drama and this partying and all these other things. And so I think that I wanted to showcase these people that are just everyday people. You don't have to be, Brene Brown. You don't have to have a TED Talk or whatever. You can just be a person that shows up in your community for your Rotary Club meetings or whatever, Lions Club. There's so many organizations out there that you can be involved with. And even if you're not doing it there, maybe you are on a diversity council at work. Just people that just show up and act as a vessel of service in some way, shape, or form. That's as simple as it is. I've done 8 episodes. I love it. It's a creative outlet. It's great for interviewing, and I just really enjoy it. So I've had just a great opportunity to get involved with this
Beautiful.
in that way. Yeah.
Beautiful. Guys, look down there into the description of the video or of the podcast. The links are down there so you can check Theresa out and her show. And it would be rude not to go across and have a little listen and see. And whilst you're thinking about going across, just hit that subscribe button on my channel first.
Yes.
You would be silly not to subscribe and get all the cool interviews that we are running here every week, because there is so many wonderful, wonderful guests out there, and Theresa, you're one of them, who spent their time and their passion with me here, and they open up about their struggles. And how beautiful is that? Because you guys out there, you're not alone. You're
Mhm.
you know, here, Theresa and me, we are
Yeah.
lucky enough to be highly functioning, and we're functioning enough in our addiction to not lose our jobs. But here we are now the new and improved versions. And
Right.
if two numbnuts like us were able to get that sorted, hey, there is a chance for you. Honestly,
Sure.
that is, life is too short. And yes, you have gone through a lot of bad times, and you might be in a really, really bad place right now. But this is not the end. The
No,
past
it's
does not
sure.
equal the future. Hey,
No.
you have got choices, and you have made that choice. You've listened to the interview till now. This is fantastic. You made a huge step there. So now the next step is taking action, and actually switch that off, and then subscribe, and then think about, okay, how does that apply to me? And make
Mhm.
one little decision
Right.
of making little things different.
Mhm.
Where could that lead you if you do that every day? If you make that
Yeah.
one
I
little
mean,
decision, huh?
it could be joining a running club. It could be, looking within yourself and saying, well, what do I love doing
Mm,
that's social? And how can I join other people that are doing that same thing? How can I give back? How can I find a cause in my community that, really speaks to my soul that
mm,
I can do with other people? And it's really that simple, Stephen. And that's just the one actionable thing you can do.
mm,
So many times it's like, oh, I'm going to hit the gym. And I think that's great. Don't get me wrong. I think working
mm,
out is wonderful. And okay, you're doing this wonderful thing, or oh, I'm going to get my master's. Okay, do that. But I really believe that until you change your peer group and the
mm,
people you're
mm,
surrounded with, I
mm,
don't think you're going to get out of your trauma, because
mm.
I think that if you hang around those same people and you have those same habits, you're going to continue, even though you might get the masters, you might get your body in shape, but your mind and it won't become better. So I think that's just so key
Mm.
to changing.
Definition of insanity is to try the same thing again and again and expecting a different outcome.
Yes,
So
yeah.
please, I'm the master of that. Please, I did that. Okay, no, 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 no. Theresa, I'm so grateful for your time. This was an amazing interview. I'm absolutely humbled. I'm honored that you were on my show. Thank you so much to you.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure. It's always wonderful to dive deep into these issues. I don't get a chance to talk about them very often. So thank you for giving me a safe place to share.
And you guys out there, look after yourself, stay strong, and make the decision to change your life around. One little tiny micro habit at a time, but take action and you can do it. And who knows where that leads you? And who knows, one day you're on my show and you're talking about your transformation. Who says it can't happen? So, you guys out there, look after yourself. Theresa, and you too. Big hugs. Bye.
Bye.